Imagine discovering a free-to-join organisation that appears to share your own high ideals and virtues. One which promises an opportunity for you to not only connect with other sovereign free thinkers in a world which appears to be plunging into an abyss, but to serve as a volunteer at a critical time in history, providing valuable support and encouragement to others in your area. Now, what if those admirable qualities that render you ideal for such a role also places you at odds with those who run the very organisation that you've committed so much of your precious time to support? What if your conviction to serve your members in accordance with the organisation's own codes and standards leads to you being sacked, fired or removed, or forced to resign? How would you feel? Traumatised? Perhaps. What about those members you'd supported, members with who you'd formed tight bonds of friendship? How would they feel? Traumatised? Disillusioned? Demoralised? Very likely. As you may be aware, the Free to Join Connecting Consciousness or CC organisation, which began in 2015, has since grown to become a global enterprise based on high ideals and commendable motives. More recently, however, a darker, more insidious character has emerged. Nowhere has this been more apparent than in the scandalous numbers of sackings, firings or removals, and the forced resignations of cherished volunteers around the world under outrageous circumstances and in a manner contrary to the organisation's own values. In the summer, a survey was produced by a small team, part of a growing multinational community of such disenfranchised volunteers who've each experienced the aforementioned trauma and have witnessed the impact on those they swore to serve. A team whose mission is now to shine a light on the emergence of what appears to be, in some opinions, a seductive and manipulative cult, and to uncover the truth behind CC finally. In the Untold Connecting Consciousness Stories survey, 48 current and former CC members across 6 countries participated, 35 of whom volunteered time and skills as CC coordinators and other leadership or specialist roles. This is their story. A bit of background on the survey that was taken. The document represents the voices of many individuals who are current and former members of Connecting Consciousness from around the world. Individuals who took the time to develop this project and share their experiences about being a member and, in many cases, an active volunteer and or donor to CC. Over the past few years, a troubling pattern regarding the termination of many volunteers along with memberships around the world has surfaced. Similarly, several resignations from CC have occurred across the countries. Often these experiences were traumatic and in many cases shocking given the circumstances that were occurring within a spiritual organisation. As such, many questions have arisen about the true nature of CC as an organisation. Among many considerations, an overriding question has emerged. Is Connecting Consciousness a spiritual organisation? Those who put together this survey and then took all the data and analysed it all and then gave us the information we've got, they gave a statement of intention, and they say, "Our intention is about truth and light. We have no desire nor need to seek revenge or any other nefarious act we have been accused of. Our intentions and motivations are very simple. Bring forward the truth. There are many things that are untold. These are truths untold. We are simply telling the truth of our experiences. That is enough. Our hearts remain dedicated to the highest good of all." The survey was conducted during August and September of 2022. Current and former members of CC from all over the world were invited to participate in an online self-administered survey asking about their experiences as members and or volunteers in Connecting Consciousness. A total of 48 participants from 6 individual countries completed the survey. As this survey was a purposive sample, thus a non-randomly selected sample of current and former CC members, generalisation to all current and former members of CC should be avoided. Conversely, this non-probability sample is robust for exploratory research. In other words, the intention of this work was not to test hypotheses or make sweeping general conclusions, but rather to design an exploratory research initiative whereby the objective was to investigate an area that had not previously been researched to the survey and data team's knowledge. The survey included both quantitative and qualitative questions, and importantly, current and former members of CC had an opportunity to share across several topics surrounding their specific and unique experiences of CC. Additionally, follow-up interviews were completed in certain cases, along with the content analysis of selected documents, for example, the CC Code of Conduct. A mixed methodological analysis approach was completed where quantitative results were summarised using appropriate statistical estimates. The qualitative data was analysed using a grounded theory approach. Emerging themes were identified and subsequently summarised with support quotes representative of all voices in the survey. The Untold Connecting Consciousness Story initiative set out to complete an exploratory investigation by connecting with the current and former CC members through an online survey, interviews, and the examination of documentation provided by both project participants and items available in the public domain. I will, throughout the rest of this video, be referring to the Untold Connecting Consciousness Story initiative as the UCCS. As previously stated, the UCCS project took an exploratory approach to capturing and understanding the experiences of current and former members of CC. Their research question was, is Connecting Consciousness a spiritual organisation? The themes that emerged from the data form the chapters of the UCCS story. Specifically, the UCCS examined the following aspects of current and former members' experiences. Why did we join? Our membership. Our leadership. Our giving and our love. Our personal data and intellectual property. Our terminations and resignations. And our alienation and intimidation. So why do people join CC? And we can draw some hypothetical reasons for why people joined CC or why people do join CC from the survey, from quotes from the survey, but also from the question was asked in a private Telegram group amongst the participants of the survey. So here's some of the hypothetical reasons or conclusions that can be drawn. Refusing COVID mandates, mandatory masks, social distancing, mandatory vaccination, estrangement and or isolation from loved ones due to COVID or personal political views, and political views supporting certain causes, for example, Q. Anger or frustration at increasing wokeness in media, seeing narratives of climate change sexualising minors, critical race theory in schools, Black Lives Matter, etc. Seeking spiritual education for advancement. Connection with others of like-mindedness. Promise of inclusivity or exclusivity. Shock value and exclusivity appearance, so to be amongst the in crowd and with the latest international intel from obviously Simon about world events and spiritual battles and things like that. Promise of non-judgment, so the leader screws aliens. So as a black sheep, which a lot of us are, some people might be thinking, I'm not as weird as him. I would fit in here.
This is the alien being that I call Mum.
And how often do you see your mum?
Oh, I would say probably once a month. That is the being that I claim to have sexual relations with. All I refer to her as is the cat queen.
So you have sex with her?
Yes.
Do you have any alien children?
You're looking at one here. This is the name, Zaka.
So that's your child.
Appeals to those who like to volunteer and try to, do more and do good in this world. Appeals to those looking to create a better world. Organisation appeared large. Simon claims it's got over 105,000 members, so it appeared well established, and it's been going for multiple years. Fangirls or fanboys following Simon Parks, so led by an older man who speaks plainly, thus appealing to older generations. Seeking healing, spiritual and otherwise. So Western medicine has not addressed certain issues, and people are seeking more information on that. Free membership. So therefore, there's no commitment or pressure of responsibility. Zoom's allowed people to interact internationally from the comfort of their own homes. So there's no pressure to go out and no financial pressure on the membership side. Association. So some Charlie Ward followers and followers of other people that these people, they probably joined the CC because these hosts collaborated on videos together and they endorse each other. Certainly with in the case of Charlie Ward, where they both say that they're working behind the scenes, etc., and they highly endorse each other. So there's a sense of safety or familiarity there, and through perhaps loved ones' recommendations and things like that. So what about the demographic of CC followers? So we can derive a hypothetical, generalised, visual, observed demographic of a CC member, of an average CC member, and based on the observations of attendance during North American and international coordinated Zoom meetings. So these observations put together by many people talking about it that were within that. So the majority are Caucasian, female, usually 40 years or over. This is not every CC member, of course. There's males in there, but the majority are Caucasian female, 40 years plus. Heterosexual, English speaking, or as a first language, usually employed. Involved in alternative therapeutic practices, a lot of the demographics. So, for example, massage, Reiki, therapeutic touch, psychic, energy healing, nutritionists, those newly awakened on the spiritual journey seeking answers or instructions. So, for things like how to meditate and such things. Those more advanced on a spiritual journey looking to connect with others that are on the same level. Of course, conspiracy theorists, Q followers, researchers, those who think they are more politically savvy, or would like to be. ET experiencers and ET researchers, of course. Those needing connection, a lot of people joined up for that reason. Desperate for world changes, desperate for Nizara Gazara, QFS, all of these positive changes. I mean, a lot of us are desperate for world changes. A lot of us, see that things need to change, and positive action needs to be taken to make certain changes in the world. But some of these people are desperate for things that are being promised by people like Simon Parks, the Connecting Consciousness organisation, things like Nizara Gazara, QFS, a new monetary system, but not the NWO type, and med beds, things that are being promised to make changes to this world. So, conclusions. From an international perspective, the main reason for joining Connecting Consciousness, that was repeated several times throughout the samples, was to meet like-minded and spiritually focused individuals and form interactive and ideal communities. As technology continues to bring information quickly into our lives, to our fingertips, there is a growing sense of division and isolation within the global population that involves differing ideological, political and religious beliefs. Further exploited by an apparent negative agenda to keep humanity ignorant and divided in every category, for example, culture, religion, politics, etc. The global pandemic of 2019 to 22 highlighted this separation and encouraged intolerance. Connecting Consciousness, through its active social media promotion by its founders, Simon and Rebecca Parks, appeared to offer an inclusive online community that was easily accessible and free of charge to join. The online aspect flourished during the period when many countries were in lockdown and assisted those in communities that were more physically isolated. Initially, respondents' early experiences with Connecting Consciousness were positive, and appear to fulfill the desire to meet others with similar ethics, morals, and ideals. However, this sentiment appeared to shift within approximately a 1 year period after membership acceptance, and especially amongst those who became more involved in the inner workings of the organisation. So, within the UCCS, the membership of the people that participated in the survey, our story begins in 2014 through to 2022. The average length of membership for the former CC members that took part in the survey was nearly 3 years. As you can see here, the years that the UCCS respondents joined CC, you have 1 in 2014, 5 in 2015, 5 in 16, 2 in 17, 3 in 18, 2 in 19, and then you have a big jump. You go 10 in 2020, and you have 17 people joining that participated in the survey, 17 people joining in 2021, don't take that as a sign, and then you had 3 in 2022. The average length of the time that these people were connecting consciousness member was 2.6 years, with a range from less than a year to 7 years. Here you can see the people that participated in the survey, the CC membership in years. Among former CC members, 70% of the UCCS respondents were CC members for 2 years or less, with the remainder of respondents were members in CC for 4 years or more. So conclusions from this: UCCS respondents joined CC for a variety of reasons, most notably to connect with like-minded people. The length of time a respondent was a member in CC ranged from less than 1 year up to 7 years. The average CC membership among respondents was 2.6 years. Our leadership. So between 2015 to 22, CC offered members several areas where we could volunteer our time and resources for the benefit of the organisation. CC leadership roles among respondents. Leadership role, some of the titles vary per country and have changed, indicates they were unpaid volunteers acting in the roles of country coordinator, state or provincial coordinator, regional coordinator, small group leader, small event hosts, admin or other special skill volunteer, for example website design and or management. As you can see from this chart, 71.4% of the leadership that took part in the survey were coordinators, 28.6% were other leadership, event hosts, small group leaders, admin, special skills, etc. In total, 35 individuals, or 73% of the survey respondents, indicated they had a leadership role in CC. 25 individuals were coordinators and 10 were other types of leaders. So this infographic describes the average length of time volunteers were in their roles within CC. This time does not include from the period that they were accepted as an official member after completing the online questionnaire. From the survey, the average length of time a participant spent as a volunteer role was no less than 1 year, with a range from 1 to 7 years. 83% of UCCS respondents who volunteer for CC did so within the past 2 years. Okay, so this is interesting. The time commitment of CC volunteers. It is estimated that the average volunteer who was assigned some sort of volunteer role within CC, going by this survey, donated 76.6 hours per month to CC. This was done willingly and without any expectation of financial compensation or other incentives. That's a lot of hours per month for someone to give willingly. It's like a part-time job. Total hours donated in the typical 1 month time frame by UCCS volunteers totaled 2,673 hours per month from this small group of people across the participants in this survey. Assigning a US dollar amount based on the average minimum wage in the USA for 2022, which was $9.87, this equates to an estimated average human resource value of $756 in human hours per person per month, based on each participant donating an estimated 76.6 hours per month. And obviously you can imagine that's an average. So some of these people have been doing a lot, many more hours, and it would equate to a lot more. But $756 per month in human resource for an average, that's taking an average. That's a lot of human resource that's been volunteered to this organisation. And of course, the source of the minimum wage is minimum wage rates by state 2022, minimumwage.org. So, yeah, like I say, that's just the average. There's a person here that, says that they had donated 210 hours per month. That's a full-time job. 40, 80, 160 hours approximately is a full-time job per month. 210 hours donated by one. And you can see all of these, like 160 hours. There's quite a few people that donated a full-time job's worth there. So the average number of hours donated by UCCS volunteers over a typical month equates to 76.6. The total hours donated in 1 month by the UCCS volunteers is 2,673 hours across 35 individuals. So money given to CC by volunteers. Amongst UCCS respondents who indicated they donated their time to CC in a leadership role, they also gave a total of $17,209 to CC and or S Parks. Donations allegedly included one-time donations, monthly contributions, and or other regular contributions. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop here. $17,209 just from these 35 participants in this survey. People that have had to leave or had been forced to leave had given this much money and, as I discussed before, this much time to the organisation. And these are people that a lot of them were, without much thought, just ejected from the organisation and blacklisted. So you can imagine that's 35 people in an organisation that believes they have 105,000 or more members. Even if you took 10% of those members to be, serious participating members, volunteers, donating money, even if you could say 10% of those, and this is hypothetical, of course, it's say 10,000 people, 10,000 people perhaps donating, and 35 people have given in their time over $17,000. So donations allegedly included one-time donations. Some ex-CC members indicated that they donated funds to help support their local or country chapter, including contributions for website hosting and or development, telephone bills, material production, and digital newsletters distribution sites such as MailChimp, etc. Additionally, some volunteers shared that they used their own funds for out-of-pocket expenses to fulfill their volunteer roles, and in most cases, the expenses were not reimbursed. These donations did not include products that Simon Parks or the CC organisation was promoting and or selling, including bioshields, also called biosticks, gold or CBD oils, all of which Simon Parks receives a commission. So think about that, the amount of donations coming in, potentially what this small sample looks like, how much money that equates to, how much money the actual size of the organisation could equate to, and not only that, there's the commission coming in from these products. Dare I say, some of them a bit suspect. Based upon the survey results, the average donation to CC or Simon Parks in 1 year per participant was $905. An overriding number of participants shared that they never received an acknowledgement or thank you for their donation. 0%, so no one, of individuals received a donation receipt. Acknowledgement was understood as an email response, telephone call, hard copy letter, or verbal thank you during a videoed segment featuring Simon Parks. It is alleged that some CC country website donations were linked directly to the country coordinator's personal email address. Receipts to where it went after that? I don't know. Or we don't know. So as you can see here from this infographic, donation acknowledgement. So based on respondent experiences and the 2020 CC Coordinator Guide, volunteer duties included the following, but were not limited, nor were they always expected of each coordinator. Event planning, so hosting virtual and in-person meetings that included those with members, international coordinator meetings, and regular coordinator meetings with their country's exclusive leaders. As you can see here, 79% of the people that responded in the survey say their donations were not acknowledged. 5% prefer not to say. Event planning. Hosting virtual and in-person meetings, they included those with members, international coordinator meetings and regular coordinator meetings with their country's executive leaders. So that's research and implement various themes for in-person virtual meetings, research and interview potential guest speakers, research and secure venues for any in-person meetings, attend in-person and virtual meetings to assist, support their teams and monitor virtual chats, participant attendance and members for potential infiltration and or inappropriate content or activities. So all of that is, was expected as volunteer duties. Monthly reports. Executive leaders and other volunteers were required to produce monthly reports that were submitted to the founders for review. These reports were to include local and country issues, socio-political events, etc., and anything that would potentially be of interest to the founders. Background and administration and human resources. To attend local team meetings, to answer emails, telephone calls, and any other correspondence, assisting members with technical issues they may have, vet new members and or interviewing prospective new members, establish and enforce guidelines for both of the head organisation and the country organisation where applicable. So also they were to referee monitor various CC social media sites. So supporting any CC members who require compassionate witness and will listen. Contributions to newsletters and or social media posts. Depending on the volunteer hierarchical level, those higher up were in charge of monitoring new volunteers. And they were also expected to report negative behaviours of any members to executive leadership. Our personal data and intellectual property. Now, another thing that was questioned, that was asked about, was how the members of CC's personal data was used and kept, and how their intellectual property was used and kept. So when you were terminated or resigned a leadership role, or you ended your CC membership, did you ask in writing for your information or data to be removed from the CC membership database? As you can see, 40% of the people said yes, they did ask. 30% said they did not even think about asking for their data to be removed. And 27.5% said they didn't ask that. 2.5% said they didn't answer at all. So among the 40 respondents who are former members, 16 of the 40% of the survey sample requested their data be removed. Then, since you asked for your information or data to be removed from the CC's database, what has happened? We ask those as a follow-up question to those that asked for it to be removed. As you can see, 68.8% said, I don't know, I never got a response to my request to remove my data. 18.8% said, I made the request and I was told it was removed, but cannot verify. 6.3% did not answer, and 6.3% said something other. Another question that was asked was, did you submit a humanitarian project? Now, Simon Parkes and the CC organisation had asked that lots of people's humanitarian projects, inventions, their project ideas, their initiatives that they had come up with themselves, they submitted on request to the CC organisation with claims that they would take them further, and being through the organisation they could use those projects and bring them further. This is something that I'd always been very sceptical about, and I said to people, hang on a minute, you gave them your intellectual property. What's happened with that? Why did you do that? It's one thing to patent and to take further a good idea of yours, a project of yours, an invention of yours, whatever it may be, and then after patenting and successfully embedding that, then go into CC and say, hey, this is my invention, by the way, I've got that, you put that on your cards. It's another thing to hand over that intellectual property for some organisation to do what they will with it. And I've always been a bit, it's one thing that I've always said to people, be careful, about giving away your intellectual property, your hard-earned, your well-thought-of ideas and such. This infographic illustrates how humanitarian projects grant proposals were submitted. So, did you submit a humanitarian project to CC? 66.7% of all the respondents of the survey said that they didn't submit a project, but 33.3% said they did. So, a third of the respondents, just to this survey, just with this small sample, of people that were in CC. A third of them said that they did give their ideas, their intellectual property, their projects, their humanitarian, their initiatives, whatever, to the organisation. So how were they submitted? So humanitarian project grant proposals could be submitted via 4 avenues. Electronically to the executive leadership or country coordinator and Simon Parkes. Electronically to Simon Parkes via his website or the country coordinator, but not both. 3 delivered in person, or 4 mailed hard copy. Some CC country websites had electronic forms created to facilitate the submission process. Approximately half of the project writers from this survey reported that they submitted their projects electronically to their own country coordinator or executive leadership, whereas half submitted both to their country and directly to Simon Parkes. So how did you submit your humanitarian project, we ask? Electronically or digitally to both my country coordinator and Simon, 50% of those that submitted one. 43.8% said electronically or digitally directly to Simon on his website or to my country coordinator, but not both. And 6.3% said otherwise. So the infographic illustrates that 87.5% of the survey participants who indicated they submitted a humanitarian project grant proposal did not receive any further information nor follow-up about their projects. Only 12.5% of the survey participants who indicated they submitted a humanitarian project grant proposal said they received a follow-up. Did anyone in a leadership position within CC ever follow up with you regarding your humanitarian project since you made the submission? 87.5% said that they hadn't had a follow-up, 12.5% said they did. After submission of your humanitarian project, did you witness any segments appearing elsewhere? Now, this is important. People had submitted these ideas, these inventions, these initiatives, or whatever to this organisation. This intellectual property with the trust that it was between them and the organisation, and there would be kind of a follow-up and a process about what happens with those projects. So after submitting them, did anyone witness them appearing anywhere else? This infographic illustrates that some survey participants witnessed segments of their humanitarian project appearing elsewhere without their consent or a prior advisement that this would occur. Shocking. Of those who indicated they had submitted a humanitarian project grant proposal, 31.3% said they had witnessed their project. That's a lot of people. Just from this small sample. Imagine if you amplified that by, how many people would have submitted. This is just from 40 odd people. So of those who indicate they had submitted a humanitarian project grant proposal, 31.3%, almost a third of people said they had witnessed their project appear elsewhere within CC without their permission, and in most cases without any acknowledgement that they were the original author. And that is important. Your projects, your hard-earned, your well thought of, your projects, your initiatives, your intellectual property, given to the organisation to work with the organisation to bring those things to life or whatever, and they are being used, in these cases, without your consent, without your acknowledgement. Your projects are their projects, or even his projects, not yours. Wow. So a conclusion here. What spurred humanitarian projects? Did the contributors understand their rights pertaining to their intellectual property? Let's just look at the definition of intellectual property. It's a noun. Property such as an idea, invention, or process that derives from the work of the mind or intellect. Also, an application, right, or registration relating to this. So this section focused on 2 specific aspects, namely former CC members' personal data and all members' humanitarian projects. So let's talk about personal data. When membership numbers of CC are quoted, there are questions surrounding the validity of the estimate. During 2021, Simon Parkes stated publicly that the Connecting Consciousness membership was approximately 100,000 people globally. Many coordinators who have had access to the membership database and or had discussions with team members who were involved with the CC database work are sceptical of the accuracy of the membership estimate. When a person leaves or is kicked out by CC, their personal data is not deleted. The information is encrypted and remains as an entry in the database. In some cases, former members receive a screenshot displaying their encrypted data with a message that states it is GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, compliant, which raises additional questions. If Simon Parkes' connected consciousness are in fact compliant when an individual requests in writing for their information to be removed and it is not. The working assumption, without further confirmation, is that Simon Parkes quotes the ever member numbers versus the current member numbers. Interestingly, another valid question is among members who are current, meaning they have not withdrawn the membership nor have they been kicked out of the organisation. How many of the current members are active? So if 100,000 is the ever member estimate and one could remove all former members, the result would be a much more accurate depiction of how many current members CC has globally. Finally, if one could extrapolate further and derive an estimate of how many members are active, it is assumed that the CC membership is significantly less than what is being shared publicly. Although there is no way in this report to accurately reflect any of these estimates, the issue is certainly another weighted example of the deceit from Simon Parkes. So in terms of humanitarian projects, the conclusion is, in 2020, Simon Parkes stated during a Zoom call to the international executive leadership that an alleged donation of Vatican gold was being made to CC. From this donation, Simon Parkes stated to witnesses that this alleged money would be divided up between various country branches that meet certain criterion. For a country or project to receive funding, they were directed to submit humanitarian projects, grants, or proposals to the founders for review and consideration. This inspired the executive leadership to create volunteer committees to advertise to their memberships that humanitarian projects were going to be collected and reviewed for potential grant funding. Additionally, Simon Parkes had also shared that a group of German bondholders were going to fund CC such that the coordinator positions would be paid in addition to humanitarian projects. The coordinators would be paid. We've visited this in my previous videos, talked to previous members. Oh, you would have been paid next week. That was half a year ago, and no one's been paid, or no one seemingly is being paid, and if they are, it's a very small collective, but I doubt that anyone is being paid, but I can't verify that. This statement evolved into the German bondholders also being CC members. As recent as Sunday, November 27th, 2022, Parkes stated in his latest video during approximately a 5-minute segment that humanitarian projects had not been funded and we all had to wait. So what had inspired humanitarian projects? From some witness observations, there was an ongoing Skype chat amongst volunteers, particularly those who were given the title coordinator, that they had members or themselves who were interested in partnering with Connecting Consciousness to be able to offer their products, inventions and or services to fellow members and eventually operate facilities under Connecting Consciousness umbrella. The general idea of these products and services were for the betterment of humanity, as these would be a CC community resource and presumably a revenue stream. It had already been noted that CC had allegedly had a healing centre located in Manchester, England, that was partnered with CC, although the details with this were never widely known. This remained a discussion topic with no formal plans to put anything into action. This was until the announcement was made of the Vatican gold. Despite no clear directives provided by Parkes, the Canadian leadership took it upon themselves to create a structure and process to assist those who were unfamiliar with the writing grant proposals, and as of the writing of this document, Canada is continuing this process in December 2022. Because writing grant proposals is something the public isn't familiar with, and was also assumed that CC was a non-profit organisation, it can be assumed that most members who submitted projects had no idea how their data and their project ideas would be used and or stored. Simon Parkes continuously shares the message that there will be an approval process and that those selected will be funded. He repeatedly states in his public videos and during international coordinator meetings, specifically in January of 2022, Simon Parkes told the Canadian team to get ready, as the humanitarian funding project's approval and funding were going to begin with Canada. An immense amount of work took place in January 2021 by the Canadian team and all Canadian project writers. In the end, a pilot initiative took place where 3 projects globally were selected to test the process. Those 3 projects were a Montessori school in South Africa, a healing centre of Simon Parkes, and 1 project from the Florida team. Becky Parkes called the Canadian country coordinator personally to let Canada know they were not selected for the pilot run. A short time later, Simon Parkes connected a Canadian coordinator meeting during significant turmoil and told the Canadian team to get themselves together as a humanitarian project funding was about to commence. Simon Parkes was clear that if the team couldn't get themselves together and work through their issues, primarily the questions and concern surrounding the suspension of a very active and well-respected coordinator, that the projects moving forward may be in jeopardy. Talk about an ultimatum. At the time of this writing, the data team was unable to confirm with any CC, current or former member, that any humanitarian projects had been approved or funded. Similarly, Simon Parkes in November of 2022 stated that in a public video that everyone simply had to wait. One of the most pressing questions is what has happened to all the intellectual property of former CC members regarding their humanitarian projects, given again using a working assumption that Simon Parkes will not select any former CC members' projects. Thus, where is our property? Who has access to our project information and what is being done with it? Terminations and resignations. The majority of the respondents to the survey are obviously former members of the CC organisation. Why were they? Why were their memberships terminated? Or, just as importantly, why did people resign? This is something that really needs to be looked into. As you can see here, 54% say that they held a volunteer role and were terminated. 46% say they held a leadership role and they resigned. So, across all UCCS respondents, 35 individuals, or 73%, volunteered for CC. Of the 35, over half were terminated, and 46% resignated their volunteer role. So let's talk about volunteers who were terminated. Was there prior contact or meeting? So amongst the 19 volunteers who were terminated, which accounts as 83%, were not contacted, nor did they have a meeting with any CC person prior to being informed that they were terminated. 17% or 3 individuals were contacted and had a meeting before they were let go. So what about from all of these people? The CC organisation is very much compartmentalised. It's put into areas, designations. It's put into different countries and then different provinces or counties from those countries, and that is the crew that you were having Zoom meetings with, or that you got to know. But all of these areas were segmented. They were compartmentalized. Like you have in intelligence communities. Compartmentalized. Only those who need to know certain things. Yeah, very much like that. With that being said, someone from Manchester in England will not know about a major fallout, say in Kentucky in America, and the amount of people that were terminated there. And when that happens, people get cut off. So suddenly, according to the testimony of many people that are involved in the survey. So how many of these volunteers were aware of terminations? And bear in mind that a lot of these people would not be aware of many of the terminations going on around the world. 2 respondents knew of 1 termination, 3 respondents knew of 2 terminations, 5 respondents knew of 3 terminations, 15% of the volunteers had no awareness of a termination, and nearly 20% of the volunteers knew of 12 or more terminations. So you can also see here on this graph, there is one person that knew of 20 terminations, one that knew of 14, one that knew of 13, 3 that knew of 12, 1 that knew of 9, 3 that knew of 8. So there's people still in these various compartmentalized areas of the CC organization that knew of many, multiple tens, up to 20 people being fired from the organization. And I've seen comments and heard members saying, "Oh no, terminations don't happen. This is just when I did the video with Steve Wand and Jackie about their terminations, they were like, yeah, no, this is either a one-off case or this just doesn't happen within CC. Well, you don't know that it happens because it's kept from you, and when these people are terminated, they are cut off, and you're not allowed to speak about it. And if you do speak about it, those comments are deleted, and you may be terminated or deleted from talking about it. And that's how this works, and that's why this video is important, and why this information is important and needs to get out there to current and former CC members. So why were you terminated from volunteering and or having a free membership with CC? So as you can see here, accused of being disruptive, aggressive, lying, pitting members against each other, cruel, deceitful. These are quotes that people had said in this survey. And the 3 main points that people had said were the reasons. 1 was guilt by association. A volunteer or member was a spouse or a friend or another individual who was terminated, and therefore, guilty by association, they were removed too. Doesn't seem very fair. It's a bit cutthroat, isn't it? Number 2 was attending non-CC groups. And there's a lot of people that were talking about being terminated because, where former CC volunteers or members were also present in these groups or meetings that were not sanctioned by CC. You want to try and continue that relationship? I mean, it could be literally a private relationship with someone you've met through CC. That would be a violation. That also just sounds a bit, I don't want to say what like, but Number 3, sharing unapproved content such as videos, websites, and other items. Specifically, I've had many people contact me because they shared my videos within their mighty networks or any of their social groups, or even talked about them in Zoom meetings. You cannot mention my name, as well as others, and as well as former members or leadership that had resigned or terminated. You cannot share unapproved content or have unapproved conversations. Yeah, MC Called Truth is absolutely banned. Just try and share one of my videos, see what happens with you. After making this video, they may give you a slap on the wrist and say, oh no, we don't fire people because of this. They do. So, some conclusions from this. Some key statements were made, or behaviours that were repeated. Constriction of knowledge or information. For example, questions going unanswered, intolerance towards critical thinking or questioning Simon Parkes or the CC or Connecting Consciousness policies. Resulted in termination and or termination of volunteers and or coordinators personally associated with the terminated person. Compartmentalization of all volunteers into groups so communication would not be shared easily. Consistent mention of information being distorted either electronically or in discussions with Simon Parkes. Consistent deception from miscommunication, unanswered communications, or altered communications. Hypocritical CC doctrines that demanded anyone associated in a leadership role act accordingly. However, these same rules and guidelines did not apply to executive leadership or founders. In the CC Code of Conduct, buzzwords such as spiritual, which is repeated 9 times, higher consciousness, high vibration, positive, welcome, integrity, sovereignty, value, were used. However, this is in contradiction to the responses given by those who participated in the survey in relation to their experiences, while members of CC, as per CC Code of Conduct, posted on the CC Canada website. Number 15. As spiritual organisation, we understand that we are all here to grow and learn. We honour the soul within every one of our members. We have a membership ranging from 18-year-olds to elderly, and we feel truly blessed and honoured to have you as our members. We just have different lessons. We value our members. We appreciate all your questions, ideas, and expertise, regardless of tenure of membership, spiritual training, culture, and level of spiritual awareness. Do they value those things? Do you have freedom of speech if you're listening out there and you're in Connecting Consciousness organisation still? Is that true? We appreciate all of your questions and expertise, regardless of the tenure of your membership. Next, terminations usually resulted in the membership being revoked and that of anyone related to the terminated member. For example, spouse, without explanation or any other example given of inappropriety. Some mentions of feeling allegedly threatened by executive leadership or founders. And lastly, seeming adaptation of rules for thee and not for me toward membership, and Pharaohism, the claim of pretense of holding beliefs, feelings, standards, qualities, opinions, or virtues that one does not actually possess themselves, by executive leadership and founders. Our alienation and intimidation. The most shocking and traumatizing happenings were the alienation and intimidation directed at each of us in many different ways, they say. So let's have a look at these infographics. Directed not to speak to others. Half of the current and former members who responded to the survey stated that they were asked on at least one occasion not to speak to others in CC. Specifically, 20.8% were asked on more than one occasion to refrain from speaking with others. Half of the respondents, or 23 individuals, were asked not to speak with someone in CC, or at least on one occasion. Additionally, 21%, or 10 individuals, were asked more than once. 2020 to 2021 saw a dramatic increase in Connecting Consciousness global membership as people worldwide attempted to cope with the chaos erupting from the COVID mandates, employment losses, and lockdowns, in addition to divisions between loved ones due to opposing views on mandates, lockdowns, and political affiliations. The countries with the most dramatic membership increases were the USA, UK, Canada, and Australia, with Australia, UK, and Canada being hit with the hardest anti-COVID government measures. Further affecting the membership numbers was the 2020 US presidential election between former President Donald Trump and former Obama Vice President Joe Biden. This election may have resulted in additional members with more pro-Republican/conservative leanings, especially after social media platforms such as Twitter and Facebook, Meta, began to censor and suspend pro-Republican and pro-Trump supporters. During this period, Simon Parkes increased his presence on YouTube with Intel updates and Q&A sessions on the US election and various other global socio-economic and political topics that focused more on the occurrences in North America, particularly the US. He would repeat a narrative that the election and resulting issues would result in days of darkness, and encouraged his viewers to stock up on supplies and establish community contacts because the internet and other communication systems would go dark. He would mention that Connecting Consciousness would be at the front lines in maintaining communications between members. How this would be possible was never discussed. Running parallel to the increased presence of Parkes and Connected Consciousness on social media, the users of 4chan and later 8chan were introduced to Q in 2017. Q's cryptic messages covered discrepancies in global politics and socio-economic structures, with inclusions of Nazism and Luciferian satanic practices employed by a minority of global elites. Many social media influencers launched their careers through the study and interpretation of Q-drops on various social media platforms. In early 2021, during a YouTube video, Simon Parkes claimed to be in a direct telephone contact with Q, which I had covered on my channel.
For many of you, it might be difficult to accept or understand, but those of you who have followed me and have watched me know that I actually do speak the truth. And if I said to you that I've spent 1.5 hours talking to the real Q, then that's exactly who I've been speaking to. And in fact, Becky was also on that call with me, and that was very, very supportive and helpful. And what's been agreed is that a couple of other people who I have been involved with on the radio shows or interviews will be invited to take part in a discussion, and we can talk about how we've got to this position and what might be coming up. I won't be responsible for bringing that together, but I will be one of the participants in that.
In 2021, Q stopped posting on 8chan. However, the Q effect was global, and influencers continued to study the Q drops for months to uncover the new messages hidden within. In reviewing the quotes provided by respondents, the majority of members joined Connecting Consciousness for communication with like-minded individuals worldwide in a spiritually focused environment. They believed they were joining an ideal, inclusive, spiritual community that would offer some kind of safety, protection, and or guidance from impending global collapse. It became evident that as members became more aware of the deeper workings within CC, that this was not the case. Some members alleged threats and humiliations via email, some publicly broadcast on YouTube, from executive leadership or founders if they questioned the policies of the organisation and the credentials of the founder, Simon Parkes. From the respondents, there seemed to be a growing sentiment amongst former members of the rules for thee, but not for me, toward membership and Pharaohism by executive leadership and founders. The overall sense was that whether a member was terminated or resigned, the result was disillusioned and sometimes heartbroken individual who felt just as, if not more, isolated and alienated than what they felt prior to joining Connecting Consciousness. So, in closing, we set out on this journey to tell our story of being members and or volunteers in leadership positions within an organisation called Connecting Consciousness, they say. Led by its founder, Simon Parkes. Simon Parkes, an internet influencer, presented CC to the public as an inclusive, not-for-profit, grassroots spiritual organisation with a goal to have a community of CC members established in every country, in every business, in every educational and medical institution, and in every government organisation collaborating in real time to share intel, discoveries, spiritual, non-religious awareness. What we discovered was not an alignment of the marketing of this organisation, nor supportive of the persona Simon Parkes presented online. Many of us were censored and were suppressed from connecting and sharing our stories. This led for us to ask one fundamental question. Is CC a spiritual organisation? Most would describe CC members as genuinely wholesome people who wanted to make a positive changes in a chaotic world that seemed to lose all common sense, and their general intention for joining was for the good of humanity. When we all initially joined CC, they say, and participated in different ways, we discovered several shared reasons for joining and overall positives that transcended location. When we initially joined CC and participated in different ways, they say, we discovered several shared reasons for joining and overall positives that transcended location and other factors. Over time, the landscape shifted and we experienced many negative outcomes that encompassed our giving, our personal information, our humanitarian projects, and most concerning, our terminations and resignations. What began as positive experiences turned into alienation and intimidation from the executive leadership that impacted many individuals and countries around the world. According to many who are familiar with what the word spiritual actually means, an understanding that CC was not living up to its expectation was emerging. The actions and words from the founders and executive leadership contradicted the traditional interpretation of what spiritual means, and hypocrisies quickly devolved into blatant fallacies and traumatic experiences. Is Connecting Consciousness a spiritual organisation? After listening to our stories, we asked the audience, what do you think?